My husband, who pretended to have met with misfortune for 6 years, returned to the Marquis Manor and brought back a woman reeking of rustic countryside air. Shen Yuanqian is my lifesaver and is carrying my child. You've been in the manor for 6 years without bearing any children, so give up your position as the legitimate wife, considering you waited for me for 6 years. I'll reluctantly let you be a concubine. This is already a favor from the Marquis Manor. I let out a scornful laugh, me eyes cold. What if I say no? He held that woman in his arms, his face full of arrogance and condescension. Then don't blame me for being heartless. I'll kick you out of the Marquis Manor with a divorce letter and leave you to wander the streets. He didn't know that after 6 years, I was no longer the Shen Yuan who could be pushed around at will, and he was no longer the high and mighty young Marquis of this manor. Jiang Yuanshu held Bai Chan in his arms, looking at me with his nose in the air, as if looking at a groveling dependent. I simply shook my head lightly and brushed my sleeves. You can't give me a divorce letter, and you can't shake my position as the legitimate wife either, because I've already remarried someone else. His face was full of shock, his eyes wide open. Then he let out a cold laugh. Absurd. Everyone in the capital knows that you, Shen Yuan, were deeply in love with me back then and waited bitterly for me in the Marquis Manor for 6 years. Would you have the guts to remarry someone else? He was certain that I would be like a soulless puppet, guarding his memorial tablet and waiting for him for the rest of my life. 6 years ago, on our wedding day, he received an imperial edict and rushed straight to the frontier. When the battle report came, the entire Marquis Manor was draped in white mourning cloth. I hadn't even completed the ceremony before becoming a widow in name. The Jiang family had no heir, and the old Marquis's hair turned white overnight. After much deliberation, the Marquis's wife decided that to preserve the manor's reputation and my honor, she would adopt a talented nephew from the clan to inherit the title. The old Marquis arranged for him to formally marry me. Now, the Marquis Manor is under my current husband's authority. Naturally, there is no way we'd let someone like Jiang Yuanshu, who deserted the battlefield, have his way. I rolled my eyes at him without hesitation. Why wouldn't I dare? Back then, news of your demise at the front reached the capital, and all the civil and military officials knew about it. Why should I wait my entire life for an irresponsible person like you? Everyone in the capital knows that the Marquis Manor is now under my husband's authority, and I am the rightful mistress of this household. Jiang Yuanxiu, since you survived this calamity and returned today, you should first go to the palace to express gratitude for the Emperor's grace and investigate what happened back then. Coming straight to the Marquis Manor to boss me around, have you forgotten the rules of the Dali dynasty? Outrageous. Jiang Yuanshu's face darkened, furious and flustered. I am the legitimate young Marquis, returning to my own manor. Must I still look at the face of a mere woman? Is what the Shen family taught you to talk back to your husband like this? I looked at Bai Chan beside me with her delicate and weak act, and immediately sneered out loud. Bai Chan took the opportunity to look tearful, clutching her handkerchief and saying aggrievedly, "Husband, I suppose sister looks down on me for my humble origins, thinks I am reaching above my station. Forget it then. It doesn't matter if I suffer some grievances." Upon hearing this, Jiang Yuanshu instantly flew into a rage. "Shen Yuan, your audacity grows by the day. You won't even listen to me anymore. The husband guides the wife. You are so unruly, kneel down and reflect on yourself." He stepped forward, relying on his strength to try and grab my wrist. Me gaze was sharp as a torch. He shouted sternly, "How dare you, Jiang Yuanshu? You've already made myself clear enough just now. The Marquis estate is now run by my husband Jiang Hongqi, and he properly inherited the title fair and square. You are no longer any young Marquis. Stop making unreasonable trouble here. Summon and escort these two people disturbing the peace of the estate out." At my command, the steward, along with the well-trained guards of the estate, all surrounded them, blocking him off like a human wall. The steward even dutifully reminded, "Second young master, the old Marquis, already adopted a son with the Marquis's wife to inherit the estate. The estate is now run by the mistress. It is no longer a place where you can throw tantrums as you please." Utter nonsense. My parents only had me as their flesh and blood. Even if I met with an accident back then, Shen Yuan should have dutifully stayed faithful to me. How could she be so ignorant of propriety and remarry someone else? How dare you, Shen Yuan? While I was away, you actually bribed the servants in the manor to speak for you. Today I'll make you understand whose surname this Marquis manor bears. Having said that, he lost control of his emotions and raised his hand straight up, wanting to bully others with his power. I remained calm in the face of danger and retreated one step composedly. The high-ranking guard beside me immediately drew half an inch of his sword to block him. Jiang Yuanshu was so angry smoke came out of his 7 orifices, yet he didn't dare step forward. You dog slaves, how dare you block me? Why wouldn't they dare? I am the mistress of the Marquis Manor, their legitimate master. As for you, the military reported your death back then. No, you've suddenly appeared safe and sound. I will definitely have my husband report to His Majesty and thoroughly investigate whether you retreated from battle and violated military law back then. As soon as the words fell, Jiang Yuanshu's eyes turned blood red with rage, and he shrank back guiltily. Seeing this, Bai Chanchan immediately raised her voice and cried out beside him. Yang Marquis fought for the country back then, and accidentally fell off a cliff and lost his memory. I was the one who rescued him in the wilderness. We suffered through hardships and barely survived. Who would have thought that upon returning to the capital, we'd be humiliated and suppressed by you like this? If you want to report this to His Majesty, we have nothing to hide and will see it through to the end. She pulled Jiang Yuanshu and stood at the entrance of the Marquis Manor, crying and making a scene in perfect coordination, attracting the common people of the capital who were watching outside to stop and discuss, pointing fingers at those inside. I watched their farce with cold eyes, my heart completely unmoved, only beckoning someone to go to the Court of Judicial Review to tell my husband that Jiang Yuanshu had returned alive. But times have changed. 6 years have passed, and even if he talks himself blue in the face today, the title of the Marquis Manor cannot possibly be returned to someone with no sense of responsibility. Bai Chanchan saw more and more onlookers gathering, pulled Jiang Yuanshu's hand, and deliberately straightened her back in front of the common people, trying to gain sympathy. My husband devoted himself wholeheartedly to the country. He accidentally lost his memory back then, and after going through countless hardships to recover his memory and return to the capital, he never expected someone would seize his nest like a magpie, taking away his family property. Miss Shen, as the eldest daughter of the minister's manor, shows such lack of propriety. Now that my husband has returned today, we must ask the clan elders to come forward and re-establish the rules of this Marquis Manor. Hearing this, I only sneered coldly. Some uninformed common people outside the gate couldn't help but start discussing after hearing such instigation. On his wedding day that year, he resolutely went off to war. He is a meritorious official who sacrificed his small family for the greater good. The Jiang family is full of loyal and brave men. How come such a domineering woman appeared in the inner quarters? She seems rather unreasonable, doesn't she? Wait! Didn't they say the young Marquis met with misfortune back then? How come he is returned safe and sound now? And who is this crying woman? The young Marquis's legitimate wife from back then was the daughter of the minister's household. Doesn't the Marquis Manor already have a new Marquis in charge? With outstanding achievements too. What is the deal with this young Marquis who suddenly appeared? Seeing the crowd's sentiment starting to shift toward rational questioning, Bai Chanchan's expression immediately became somewhat unsustainable. I took the opportunity to step up the stairs, raised my voice, and said resoundingly, "Fellow townspeople, please bear witness. As everyone knows, the current head of the Marquis Manor is my husband Jiang Hongqi. 6 years ago, we were married under the witness of the clan elders and the Ministry of Rights. Now our child is already 4 years old and was personally appointed by His Majesty as the Crown Prince's study companion. After that incident with the former second young Master Jiang, in order to continue the family line and support the household, the Marquis Manor has long since changed the heir to the title, according to imperial law. Me husband serves the court with utmost dedication. Where does this talk of usurping the nest come from? Taking 10,000 steps back, even if the title is to be passed down in the future, It will be passed to my capable son. It is not the place of some outsider who appeared out of nowhere to point fingers. Upon hearing this, the common people suddenly understood and nodded in agreement one after another. That is right. Lady Howe personally distributed porridge in the south of the city last winter, saving countless lives. We all witnessed it. Lady Howe has the heart of a bodhisattva, absolutely no mistake. The current Lord Marquis and his wife have a deep marital bond who in the entire capital doesn't know this. Know this person claiming to be the young Lord Cood, he be that deserter from years ago, disappeared for so many years, and now wants to come back out of nowhere to fight for the Marquis Manor's fortune. Good heavens, abandoning everything and vanishing for 6 years, then coming back wanting to drive out the legitimate wife who has been holding up the family. Where in the world is there such shameless logic? Hearing the common people's discussions, Jiang Yuanshu clenched his fists tightly in anger, his eyes bloodshot. Bai Chan hadn't expected that the capital's citizens weren't as easy to fool as the village women in the countryside. Under the weight of public opinion, she quickly lost her confidence and felt guilty. I looked down at them from my elevated position, raising an eyebrow slightly. If I were you, I'd be kneeling at the palace gates right now, begging for forgiveness, explaining why you failed to report your whereabouts all those years. As for what you just shamelessly said about demoting your wife to concubine, save that kind of delusional talk for your dreams. Shen Yuan, don't you dare spread your lies here to deceive the masses. My father and mother would absolutely never recognize someone else as their son. It must be you, this woman greedy for wealth and status, who has been manipulating things and bewitching the old couple. The more he spoke, the angrier he became, his eyes crimson red. Suddenly he erupted, trying to break through the guard's blockade. Now that I've returned today, Shen Yuan, he absolutely won't let you off easily. He was blocked by the guards, and could only stare at me from a distance, a cold sneer of exasperation appearing at the corner of his mouth. Fine, you couldn't stand the loneliness and remarried, but you still want to occupy my family's position as the main wife and the power to manage the household. The Marquis estate is surnamed Zhang Yivri Blade of Grass and Tree here belongs to me, Jiang Yuanshu. You must spit it all out. Looking at his shameless face, I sternly rebuked. If you've got delusions, go see a doctor as soon as possible, since you don't believe it. When the 2 elders arrive in a bit, go ask them yourself. Bai Chan hurriedly rushed forward, pulling him with endless distress. Yuanshu, don't be angry. She is just a cast-off wife who got lucky. How dare she be disrespectful to you, the true young master? I sneered, completely too lazy to bother with this clueless woman. Whether it is Jiang Yuanshu or Bai Chan, these two probably think the world should revolve around them, and I don't have the spare time to waste words on them. Someone escort these two into the side hall to wait. At my command, the servants immediately stepped forward. Several strong and sturdy guards directly moved forward, controlling them like picking up chickens, and brought the two into the estate. The main gate slammed shut with a bang, cutting off the outside view, and Jiang Yuanshu's plan to play the victim in front of outsiders completely fell through. He was clearly so angry that he had nearly lost his reason. His face flushed purple, and he suddenly struggled violently, roaring, "Let go of me. I am the young Marquis. Who dares treat me like this? I dare." Just then, a deep and aged voice rang out. The old Marquis, leaning on his cane and supported by the old madam, finally walked out slowly from the inner hall. When she saw that it was really Jiang Yuanshu standing before her, the old madam's entire body trembled, her cane nearly falling to the ground, and then she burst into loud, sobbing cries, shakily rushing forward. "Yuanshu, is it really my son Yuanshu who has returned?" Jiang Yuanshu dropped to his knees with a thud, heavily kneeling on the stone pavement. Mother, your unfilial son has returned. Your son survived the disaster, escaped from death, and can finally come back to serve you 2 elders. Mother and son embraced and wept bitterly, the scene quite heartbreaking. After a long while, Jiang Yuanshu wiped his tears, suddenly turned his head, and pointed at me viciously. "Mother, this woman has no sense of propriety. Not only did she fail to remain faithful to me back then, she actually remarried someone else, and even bore another man's child. She has occupied the Marquis Manor, deceived you two elders. Your son is unfilial for letting mother suffer such grievances. Upon hearing this, the old lady was stunned and even stopped crying. The old Marquis looked at him coldly, his brows tightly furrowed. After a long while, he heavily thumped his cane and angrily shouted, "What nonsense are you spouting? Joanna is now the legitimate mistress of our Marquis Manor, and the child she bore is the bloodline our Jiang family values most. How dare you speak such slander here?" "Father," Jiang Yuanshu's face was full of disbelief. "Even you are siding with this outsider. You should know that the day I left, I didn't even have time to complete the wedding ceremony with her. Her child is already 4 years old. It is definitely not my seed. Shen Yuan has been controlling the power of the Marquis Manor with ill intentions. Know that your son has safely returned to set things right. I definitely won't let her continue to lord it over everyone in the manor. Chan Chan, quickly pay respects to the two elders." He pulled Bai Chan Chan over, and they both knelt before the old Marquis. Bai Chan Chan was also good at reading the room. She immediately put on a pitiful appearance and bowed softly. "This commoner woman, Bai Chan Chan, knows well that I come from humble rural origins with lowly status, unworthy of the Marquis' Manor's standing. But the young Marquis is after all the true legitimate bloodline of the Marquis' Manor. How can we let someone completely unrelated confuse the Jiang family's lineage? I beg the old Marquis and old lady to see clearly and make the decision for my husband." The old lady was completely dumbfounded, her mind in utter chaos. It took her a long while to snap out of the shock of this reunion. "Silly child. What nonsense are you talking about? Joanna is indeed the rightful mistress of the Marquis Manor. That day when you left and never returned, barely a month passed before news came from the border that you died in battle. As your mother, me heart was torn to pieces. I wanted to die. But such a grand Marquis Manor cannot go a single day without a master, cannot have its lineage cut off. Joanna comes from a distinguished family. She is proper and follows the rules. She could have returned to her parents' home to find another match, but we couldn't bear to let her youth be wasted like that. And it was also to preserve the manor's future, so we made the decision to let her." Jiang Yuanshu couldn't listen to these explanations at all and impatiently cut off his mother's words. "She was betrothed to me in the first place, so it is only right that she keeps her chastity for me her whole life. She must have been greedy for the Marquis Manor's wealth and glory, unwilling to be a widow, so she sweet-talked and deceived you all. What so-called adopted righteous son, I think. He is clearly an accomplice this woman found in private to seize power. Father, mother, you are both getting on in years. You absolutely mustn't be fooled by her fake sanctimonious face." As he spoke, rage surged from Jiang Yuanshu's heart, and he suddenly sprang up from the ground, waving his arms as he lunged toward me, ready to get violent. "You cunning woman, deceiving my elderly parents, controlling the Marquis estate's assets, and raising this bunch of insolent servants who only recognize you. Now that I, the rightful master, have returned, I'll make sure all your schemes come to nothing." He did have some foundation after all. This charge carried tremendous force. Fortunately, the guard beside me was quick-eyed and swift-handed, firmly restraining him in a death grip. I took the opportunity to step back several paces, coldly watching his crazed and ugly display. Seeing this, the old Marquis was furious beyond measure, his beard trembling with rage. "Outrageous, Jiang Yuanshu, you've truly gone mad. Yuanshu, you mustn't act so recklessly. She is now your elder sister-in-law in name, and a meritorious contributor to this Marquis estate. How can you be so disrespectful to her?" The old madam also rushed forward in panic to stop him, but Jiang Yuanshu seemed possessed, his eyes bloodshot, still struggling desperately and shouting at me. These years of wandering outside had left Jiang Yuanshu tainted with a violent aura plus. He was after all once the apple of the two elders' eyes. The guards were wary of consequences and didn't dare truly harm him severely. For a moment the scene became somewhat chaotic, seeing him break free from one guard's restraint and about to close in on me again. The old Marquis stepped forward without hesitation, blocking in front of me like a great mountain. "You rebellious son, stop this instant." Jiang Yuanshu stared with bloodshot eyes at the elder who once loved him most, and roared hysterically. You've all been bewitched by her. This fickle woman has no right to sit in the position of the Marquis Manor's mistress. Tell that impostor who took my position and stole my woman to get the hell out here. I want to see who dares to swallow up my title, Jiang Yuanshu's title. He roared without any grace in this great hall, like a gambler who had lost everything and gone mad. The old Marquis was so enraged by his arrogant and ignorant appearance that he staggered backward repeatedly, clutching his chest, unable to catch his breath, nearly collapsing. Old Marquis. I was shocked and quickly stepped forward to support him, helping him catch his breath. The old madam was also so anxious that tears streamed down her face, beating her chest and stamping her feet. Yuanshu, what kind of evil are you causing? 6 years have passed. The household has long since changed. You are no longer the young Marquis. Why can't you just settle down? The old madam was his birth mother who carried him for 10 months. Yet even these heartfelt words couldn't bring Jiang Yuanshu back to his senses. He simply started acting like a scoundrel, pointing at the beam in the great hall and shouting, "You've all been deceived by her. I don't believe this nonsense. Today I am sitting right here in this main hall and waiting tell that outsider and his bastard to get out here and face me." The house was turned upside down because of his nonsense. Teacups shattered all over the floor, and I also looked a bit dishevelled from taking care of the old Marquis. Just then, a steady and powerful sound of footsteps suddenly came from outside the hall, accompanied by a stern and cold shout that instantly suppressed all the commotion in the room. What arrogant fool dares to spout such nonsense in this Marquis's residence and offend this Marquis's wife? Before the words even finished, a tall and upright figure strode into the hall. The guards immediately respectfully cleared a path. Jiang Hongqi descended like a god, and without a word, with a wave of his sleeve, his powerful aura directly forced Jiang Yuanshu to retreat repeatedly, finally falling awkwardly into the Grandmaster's chair. At this moment I must exclaim that someone like Jiang Yuanshu, a pure epitome of extreme selfishness and blind confidence, has really opened my eyes. He abandoned his wife and family from the start with no word at all, and when he came back, he even brought along a so-called true love. Not only does he have zero guilt toward his parents and wife, he actually has the nerve to demand the female lead hand over household management rights, step down to become a concubine, and even shamelessly demands she remain faithful to him for life. Who the hell gave him such audacity? Fortunately, our female lead is clear-headed and independent, with one countermeasure after another, and her current husband gives off maximum security vibes. I was firmly protected behind Jiang Hongqi. He lowered his head, his gaze instantly transforming into a pool of spring water, asking gently, "Were you hurt by him?" I shook my head, about to speak, but saw his eyes instantly turn cold, sweeping like a sharp sword toward Jiang Yuanshu, who had fallen to the side, his voice sharp as ice. "You just now wanted to lay hands on the Marquis Manor's mistress." The butler at the side immediately stepped forward to reporting to the Marquis. This person, claiming to be the second young master, spoke rudely as soon as he returned to the manor, insulted the madam without any manners, and even tried to use force against the madam. If the guards hadn't stopped him, the consequences would have been unthinkable. 6 years I had used both kindness and authority in the Marquis's manor, and had long become the respected mistress in charge. The servants' futures and livelihoods all benefited from my grace. Seeing this uninvited guest dare to disrespect me, they naturally sided with me, hastily pointing out the culprit, his misdeeds one by one. At this moment, Jiang Yuanshu finally managed to steady himself and get up. After seeing Jiang Hongqi's face clearly, he immediately flew into a rage, his face twisted with jealousy. "You are that impostor who stole what is mine, usurping the nest." Jiang Hongqi snorted coldly, looking down at him from above with contempt. "Yuana and I are a lawful married couple who went through proper matchmaking, formally bowed to heaven and earth, and were recorded in the Imperial Jade Register. Not only recognized by the clan, but also personally approved by His Majesty with an imperial decree. I don't know when it became such an ugly slander in the mouth of you, a deserter who disappeared for 6 years. As for you," He glanced at Jiang Yuanshu with disdain, his peripheral vision sweeping over Bai Chan, who had been pretending to be delicate beside him. The incident happened so suddenly just now. Everyone was dealing with Jiang Yuanshu's outburst, so I didn't pay much attention to Bai Chan's performance. Now that the hall had quieted down, I followed the line of sight and saw that Bai Chan was staring at Jiang Hongxi with eyes full of amazement, even somewhat entranced. The greed and shock in her eyes couldn't be hidden, overflowing with expression. This was no wonder Jiang Hongxi inherited his title through merit at a young age. Not only was he His Majesty's most capable right-hand man, but he also had a tall figure, sword-like brows and starry eyes, with every gesture carrying the dignity of one long accustomed to high position. In comparison, Jiang Yuanshu had wasted these years in the countryside, tainted by the vulgarity and pettiness of the marketplace. Add to that the long journey to the capital, leaving him dusty and dishevelled. The two compared were like clouds and mud, the superiority and inferiority immediately apparent. Bai Chan's fawning gaze had long since exposed her vain and materialistic nature completely. Seeing Jiang Hongxi looking at her, Bai Chan immediately bowed coquettishly, her voice so sweet it seemed water could be wrung from it. "Lord Marquis, my husband is truly the old Marquis's biological son. There must be some huge misunderstanding here. I hope the Lord Marquis will be magnanimous." "Husband, how affectionately you call him." Jiang Hongxi remained completely unmoved, mocking coldly. "Jiang Yuanshu, you got married outside. The betrothal gifts, the name inquiry, the auspicious divination, the wedding date, did you follow even one of our great Li dynasty's proper procedures?" Jiang Yuanshu was momentarily speechless, his face flushing red. Bai Chan was even more embarrassed, wringing her handkerchief repeatedly and laughing awkwardly. In the countryside, conditions are simple, so naturally everything was kept simple. Without the 3 matchmakers and 6 betrothal rites, without parental consent. That is privately exchanging vows. Illicit cohabitation, you two, who disregard even the most basic propriety. What face do you have to stand in this hall and accuse my properly wedded wife? Jiang Hongxi's words hit the mark, each one piercing to the heart. Hearing this, Jiang Yuanshu was so ashamed and angry that he immediately flew into a rage, but before he could spew more profanity, Jiang Hongxi had already helped me sit down properly to the side. With a wave of his hand, his authoritative voice echoed through the hall. "Are you all made of wood? Does the Marquis Manor pay you monthly wages just to watch a show? This person has trespassed into the manor, made a scene in the hall, and insulted the lady of the house. Seize him immediately and give him 10 heavy strikes with the rod, according to family law, to teach him the rules of the Marquis Manor." Jiang Yuanshu jumped up in fright and shrieked, "You dare! I am a Jiang. I am of the Marquis Manor's bloodline. I am now the highest authority in this manor. Beat him." With one command, several burly servants immediately stepped forward, pinned the desperately struggling Jiang Yuanshu firmly onto the long bench in the courtyard, raised the heavy punishment rod, and amid his screams delivered the punishment thoroughly and solidly. On this side, the old Marquis, due to his agitation, had already been safely escorted by the steward to the flower hall in the back to rest. The manor's resident physician immediately went to administer acupuncture and examine him. Fortunately, it was only excessive emotional distress, and nothing serious. In the courtyard, Bai Chan was scared pale by the sound of the paddle strikes, shrinking behind a pillar without daring to say even half a word of plea. After 10 strikes were finished, Jiang Yuanshu's original arrogant attitude was completely beaten away, and he lay on the bench wailing like a dead fish. The old madam was still soft-hearted after all. With reddened eyes, she glanced at me and sighed. Alas, Yuanshu did come back alive after all, which is some comfort to the 2 elders. Know that he has already received the family punishment. Why don't we just let this matter go for now? The death penalty can be avoided, but punishment for the living cannot be escaped. Jiang Hongxi stood in the hall and said coldly, according to reason, "If he had died in battle back then, it would have been a glorious name as a martyr for both country and family, and everyone in the Marquis's household would naturally respect and honor him. But now he is come back from the dead, not only alive and well, but also brought back a woman of unknown origin to cause a scene. What exactly was the situation at the front lines back then? This matter must be handed over to the Ministry of War to reopen the case files for thorough investigation. If someone catches evidence and convicts him of desertion and deceiving the emperor, a capital offense, the entire Jiang family will lose their heads along with him. When the old madam heard the consequences were this severe, she shuddered in fright. It would implicate so many people. Mother, rest assured. Your son will handle this matter properly for the next few days. Just let them stay quietly in the side courtyard and not cause any more trouble. After saying that, Jiang Hongxi turned around, gently squeezed my palm with his warm hand, his eyes filled with unwavering determination. Don't worry, my lady. Whether now or in the future, I will never let anyone overstep you. I will definitely seek justice for you in all matters. I gazed into his affectionate eyes, feeling a sense of peace in my heart. I naturally trusted him. It is just that Zhang Yuanshu, that frog in a well, is still immersed in his young master's delusion, unable to extricate himself. After being helped up by the servants, he stared at us with resentment, cursing through gritted teeth. Shen Yuan, you heartless woman, you actually joined forces with outsiders to humiliate me like this. You won't have a good ending. Listening to his impotent rage and curses, I didn't even have the interest to refute him. I really wanted to crack open his head to see what kind of mush was inside. Even now, he still thinks that I am the one who wronged him. Am I supposed to give up my wonderful life and stand in place like a pool of stagnant water, wasting my entire life for someone who abandoned me? Absolutely ridiculous. I am the legitimate daughter carefully raised by the minister's household. On my wedding day, I was coldly neglected and separated from my husband, and within a month, I received the tragic news of his death. If I had chosen to bow to fate back then, and spent my youth wasting away beside temple lamps and Buddha statues, what a cruel punishment that would have been for me. Fortunately, the Jiang family elders were quite open-minded back then. To make it up to me, they arranged for me to marry Jiang Hongqi, man of both talent and good looks. He was like a beam of light, giving me hope to take control of my life again. No, I hold the household authority, with businesses spread throughout the capital. I've become the true mistress of the Marquis's manor. So naturally I won't lose my composure over a few crazy words. The old madam was mentally and physically exhausted, and had no choice but to have the servants carry him back to the side courtyard, and settle him there for now. As for that Bai Chan as a guest, she naturally moved in there too. Meanwhile, I calmly returned to my own main courtyard. Just as my husband said, Jiang Yuanshu's sudden resurrection. This time is definitely not a simple matter. Once the Ministry of War gets involved, I am afraid it will stir up quite a storm, however. The old Marquis and his wife had regained what they'd lost after all, so they were quite delighted for the first 2 days. The two elders personally went to the side courtyard to show their concern, and learned that Jiang Yuanshu had fallen off a cliff and lost his memory back then, and was rescued by a farm girl. The two became husband and wife in the village, and life was passable. Until recently, when Jiang Yuanshu went into the mountains to gather herbs and hit his head again, only then did he coincidentally remember his own background. They joyfully sold off their belongings and came to the capital, thinking they could continue living the pampered life of a young marquis, but unexpectedly the marquis's manner had long since changed completely. This huge gap shattered his fragile yet greedy sense of pride entirely. Mother, I am the flesh that fell from your body, the legitimate heir of the Marquis manor. You found an adopted son with no blood relation to control the family business. So what does that make my position as the true young master? That Shen Yuan fine, she didn't keep her wifely duties and remarried. But Chan has suffered so much with me. Surely you can't just let her remain a nameless mistress. Mother, you must help me take back everything that belongs to me. The old madam listened to her son's complaints, also at her wit's end, and said helplessly, this matter still depends on what Yuanda and Hongxi think. The Marquis manor now is no longer what it used to be. Jiang Yuanshu endured the pain in his body and shouted indignantly, why should we look at his face? Could it be that in mother's heart, that impostor is more important than me, your own son? The old madam let out a long sigh and earnestly advised. After all, He is already the rightful head of the Marquis Manor, and even more so, a highly favoured person before His Majesty. Only by relying on him to mediate can your case of returning from the dead be settled without being convicted. Your father's health is poor, Yuan Shu. Just focus on recovering from your injuries. Other matters can be discussed later. The old madam was truly exhausted. This son of hers caused chaos the moment he returned, showing no progress at all. Having finally pacified him, the old madam was already worn out. Listening to the secret reports from the servants, I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. Whether he is willing or not, he'll have to accept the fact that he has been abandoned by the times. My life has always been moving forward in great strides, and there is no way I'll ever roll around in the mud with him again. After Zhang Yuanshu moved into the side courtyard, everyone in the Marquis's manor went about their business as usual. The servants were sharp-eyed and clear-minded, and none of them took this down-and-out second young master seriously. After all, the Marquis was the pillar of the household at most. They'd just allocate some monthly allowance from the accounting office to support him. As for that Bai Chan, he didn't bother to pay her any attention, but she couldn't hold herself back and came looking for me on her own. When I learnt she was requesting an audience, I gave a cold smile and deliberately had the servants leave her waiting for a full cup of tea's time to properly grind down that reckless temperament of hers. Bai Chan managed to endure it, but when she stepped into my luxurious main courtyard, her eyes couldn't help darting around everywhere, the jealousy and greed in them almost materializing and spilling out. Sister. She addressed me familiarly. Yuanshu and I just arrived. Yet everyone in the Marquis's manor is being so secretive about Yuanshu's status. I've been living here for several days now, and no one has come to arrange the proper standing of a young mistress for me. Just what position are you planning to place us in? I sat on the rosewood chair, elegantly lifted the Rukiln teacup, and took a light sip of tea. This matter of rules and status isn't something a mere mistress of the Marquis Manor like me can decide at will. When it comes down to it, he is just the second young master of the Zhang family staying in the manor. His private affairs are none of my business. As for you, you have neither parental arrangement nor matchmaker's words between you. For me, as his sister-in-law, to give you a meal is already the utmost kindness. Bai Chan got anxious and quickly cut to the chase. Then you can't just watch us unable to even step out the door. Yuanshu wants to go out and catch up with his old classmates and noble friends, to maintain connections, but he doesn't even have silver to tip the servants. This is too shabby. So they can't make ends meet and came to ask for money. I understood clearly in my heart. I casually summoned the accounting maid. Go give Miss Bai 100 taels of silver as a meeting gift, lest outsiders gossip and say our Marquis's manor is stingy toward relatives staying with us. Hearing this, Bai Chan's eyes nearly popped out, her voice rising 8 octaves. 100 taels. Are you sending off a beggar? You've monopolized the entire manor's household management authority. Know that our legitimate young master has returned. The gold and silver treasures in the storehouse should rightfully be split in half with us. If you don't give it, then we'll have no choice but to invite the clan elder to uphold justice and divide the household. When that time comes, what we'll split won't be just this half. Hearing this brazen robbery speech, I couldn't help but chuckle. 100 taels of silver is enough for an ordinary country family to live comfortably for several years. It is just going out for drinks and catching up, not asking you to buy a mansion or land. How is this treating you like a beggar? As for splitting the family, if Zhang Yuanshu has the guts to bring it up to the old Marquis himself, and the elders nod in agreement, I'll naturally support it with both hands and won't stand in the way. Since I married in and took over managing the household, over these 6 years, the Marquis Manor's originally deficit-ridden shops have been run prosperously by me, and the generous dowry I brought has multiplied through compound interest, acquiring countless quality private assets. I know exactly where every penny in the accounts came from, clear as a mirror in my heart. All those truly profitable businesses are my personal private property. Shen Yuan, since I worked so hard to earn it, why should I split it with this shameless pair? A flash of shrewdness and calculation crossed Bai Chan's eyes. Thinking she'd found my weak spot, she snorted coldly and stopped talking. Watching her smug look of a petty person achieving success, I secretly found it amusing. If this woman were truly smart, she'd take the 100 tails and live properly. No, with such greed, like a snake trying to swallow an elephant, sooner or later she'll bring about her own destruction. Bai Chan Chan took the banknote, too lazy to keep up the weak act, and turned to leave with her nose in the air. Seeing this, the head maid El Fei Yun beside her curled her lip in disgust. "Madam, did you see that? The way her eyes lit up staring at those banknotes just now. It is like she hasn't seen money in 8 lifetimes." As soon as she entered our room, she was sneakily looking around everywhere. "I think this woman has bad intentions and will definitely cause trouble." I calmly put down my teacup, me tone even. Whether her intentions are good or bad, that is all the karma Jiang Yuanxiu brought upon himself. What does it have to do with me? Send 2 reliable people to watch the side courtyard. As long as they don't do anything outrageous, just let them make a fuss. Just as I expected, within 2 days, after Jiang Yuanxiu got the money, he went out to indulge in wine and women. When he came back, emboldened by alcohol, he started jumping around and ran to the main courtyard to make a huge scene, insisting that I hand over the household management keys of the Marquis Manor. Unfortunately for him, he had barely thrown his tantrum for 2 sentences when he ran right into my husband, who had just returned from court. After a sharp-tongued scolding that tore him to shreds, Jiang Yuanxiu couldn't save face, so he took the opportunity to shout and yell about splitting the family and establishing a separate household. I had already guessed he would take this step. When the old Marquis found out, he was so angry he nearly fainted again. I don't know how Jiang Yuanxiu cried and played the victim in front of the old madam. But in any case, the 2 elders eventually nodded in reluctant agreement. When I received the news, the family division plan had already been finalized. He got his wish and moved out of the Marquis Manor with Bai Chan Chan to a remote separate residence. While this main residence of the Marquis Manor, symbolizing power and status, still rightfully belonged to me and Jiang Hongqi. According to clan rules, he was allocated 30,000 taels of silver from the public accounts, plus 2 barely sustainable old shops. As for Bai Chan Chan, since they had split off, the old madam let her become official, making her Jiang Yuanxiu's young mistress. I was happy to see this happen and said nothing more about it. On the day they left the manor, Jiang Yuanxiu stood outside the main gate, thinking he had victory in hand, looking at me mockingly with great satisfaction. "Shen Yuan, you followed that wooden stick who follows rules everywhere. Sooner or later you'll regret it." Look at his rigid and boring appearance. All your scheming to find yourself a way out amounts to nothing more than this. Truly congratulations to you. I faced the sunlight, the corners of my mouth curving into a mocking arc. "Well then, thanks so much for your concern. Me husband is obedient to me in everything and deeply devoted. I know perfectly well how good our days are. As for certain people, don't go acting all high and mighty outside just because you have a few taels of silver. When the time comes and you've squandered everything, you'll suffer for it." At my command, I had the servants throw all their shabby luggage onto the carriage at the fastest speed possible. The old madam, worried about this good-for-nothing son, personally accompanied them to the separate residence, and only returned to the manor with a sigh after seeing everything properly arranged. Once they moved out, I felt the air in the Marquis Manor became much fresher, and our peaceful and harmonious days were completely restored. The news of Jiang Yuanxiu's return from the dead spread like wildfire throughout the capital's elite circles, becoming the talk of the town for a while. Ivrione said he had great fortune, but upon learning that he had actually married a crude countrywoman in the countryside, they all sneered at it as a joke. Fortunately, he was now just an idle second young master who had been separated from the manor without any official position, so he couldn't stir up any political waves. It was just that Bai Chan Chan, this mistress of the house with no background whatsoever, would inevitably become the laughingstock of those noble ladies in social circles during their tea-time gossip. Since this was the path Jiang Yuanxiu chose himself, as long as he didn't regret it, I wished them a harmonious marriage for 100 years. 3 months later, during the season when all things come back to life, the princess held a grand spring banquet at her separate residence, inviting the capital's elite. As the mistress of the Marquis Manor, he was naturally invited to attend. What surprised me was that I actually saw Bai Chan at the banquet. After just a few months, she had thoroughly mastered the art of social climbing, already wearing the most fashionable and expensive silk in the capital. Unfortunately, temperament is something that emanates from one's bones. The jewelry on her head was old-fashioned in style, obviously something the old madam had rewarded her with years ago from the bottom of her chest, with no sense of coordination whatsoever. She had been happily showing off in front of the female relatives of several low-ranking officials, but when she looked up and saw me being ushered in like the moon surrounded by stars, her expression instantly darkened. As she moved around at this moment, she inexplicably revealed a trace of extremely strong hostility. I found it amusing. Naturally, I wouldn't bother getting into a conflict with her on such an occasion, so I walked straight toward the main table, ignoring her. Who knew that Bai Chan would shamelessly sidle up to me, lowering her voice and saying through gritted teeth, "Shen Yuan, you look so high and mighty now, feeling quite pleased with yourself, aren't you? You've seized the glory that should have belonged to me. If it weren't for you, this scheming woman, monopolizing the Marquis Manor's resources, Yuan Shu would be so much more glorious now." I couldn't help but stop in my tracks, looking at her with the kind of gaze one would give an idiot. How glorious could he be? Bai Chan wrung her handkerchief fiercely, a trace of madness flashing in her eyes. "What you owe us, husband and wife. You'll have to cough it all up sooner or later. Do you know how hard it is for Yuan Shu to socialize outside now? He is called the Marquis Manor's second young master. But in reality, people are laughing at him behind his back. If it weren't for survival, how would he have ended up wandering in the countryside? How would he have lost his title? This is all your fault." I listened in amazement, feeling that these two were truly a match made in heaven. "So what? What does this have to do with me? You should be like a chaste and virtuous woman staying in the empty rooms of the Marquis's manor, waiting for him to return, not running off with his family fortune." I let out a soft laugh, me gaze pitying. "Since you think he is such a prized catch, then you'd better hold on to Jiang Yuan Shu tightly and live your life well. The family division was something you begged for yourselves. It is clearly written in black and white. Know that you've squandered most of the silver, and finally realize your mistake. Sorry, but it is too late." I brushed off my sleeves, my tone turning cold. Today's spring banquet is attended by the imperial relatives and nobility of the capital. If you are smart, you'll behave yourself and perform well, and not embarrass the Jiang family here. She bit her lip tightly, her eyes full of unwillingness and scheming. I didn't take it to heart and turned to exchange pleasantries with the other ladies. But I never expected that Bai Chan would be foolish enough to dare use such underhanded tactics to scheme against me at the princess's banquet. Originally, male and female guests were seated separately at the banquet. I had just taken my seat and sipped a few mouthfuls of tea when an unfamiliar little maid carrying a tray came rushing over recklessly and, with a splash, spilled an entire cup of sticky fruit wine all over my brocade dress. I've been navigating this deep mansion for years. What kind of vicious backyard schemes haven't I seen? With such a clumsy excuse, how could I not know what she is plotting? I am just curious where Bai Chan got the guts to cause trouble at this kind of imperial banquet. The little maid was so frightened she dropped to her knees with a thud, trembling. "Madam, please calm your anger. This servant deserves death. This servant will take Madam to the side room to change clothes right away." I looked at her with an ambiguous smile and waved my hand. "No harm done. Lead the way." I followed behind her with my personal maid Lil Feiyun. Halfway through the corridor, Lil Feiyun alertly leaned close to my ear and whispered, "Madam, this servant saw clearly just now that Bai Chan was hiding behind the rockery and secretly exchanged glances with this maid leading the way. I am not sure what trap she has set, but thinking back to those words full of hatred she said earlier, this matter is definitely not simple." Using the motion of adjusting my hairpin, I quietly made an extremely discreet hand signal to the Marquis Manor's hidden guards in the shadows. When attending this kind of large banquet, every family's matriarch has their own skilled people hidden nearby, guarding against exactly this kind of sudden ambush. I was led into a secluded side room to change clothes. Just as I finished changing and came out, the little maid who had been waiting outside was indeed nowhere to be seen. Immediately after, a commotion came from outside, and Elphayun was forcibly called away by several matrons under some trumped-up excuse. The entire side courtyard was instantly cleared out, leaving only me alone in the room. I saw a sneaky shadow flash across the window paper, and couldn't help but let a cold smile creep onto my lips. Whoever set this up is not only stupid, but also extremely insane. Just as I reached the door, the side room door was locked from the outside. Immediately after, a strange sweet fragrance began emanating from a bronze incense burner in the corner. It is that low-life aphrodisiac incense from the Jangu. This kind of incense not only weakens one's limbs, but inhaling too much also clouds one's mind, causing one to do extremely absurd things. Fortunately, I was wearing a detoxifying sachet tribute from the southern border, and immediately covered my nose and mouth with a handkerchief. Just then, the side door window was forcefully pushed open, and Jiang Yuanshu jumped in, his face flushed red and his eyes wild with madness. Seeing me trapped in the room, a disgusting, sinister grin appeared on his face. "Shen Yuan, you owe me this. Today I'll ruin your reputation completely, and you'll obediently hand over everything from the Marquis Manor. As long as people outside see you and me, a man and woman alone together in a room, your reputation as the mistress of this noble household will be completely ruined. When that happens, your high and mighty current husband will never tolerate a woman with a tarnished reputation. Jiang Yuanshu, you are truly despicable and shameless to the extreme." I looked at him coldly, as if watching a clown jumping around. "Despicable? I am the true legitimate son of the Marquis's household. It is all because you married someone else that I lost the wealth and glory that should have been mine. Since you won't obediently hand over the household management authority, I have no choice but to resort to this underhanded scheme. Shen Yuanchan and I have already planned this out. This intoxicating incense will soon make you lose your senses. When the princess eldest and the others break down the door and see you and me entangled like this, you'll have no choice but to obediently return to my side as a concubine with your generous dowry. There is no other way out for you." Having said that, he lunged at me with bared fangs and claws, taking advantage of the incense's effects. So I didn't hold back and backhanded him with a slap, striking hard across that hypocritical face of his, with a crisp smack. It spun him half a circle on the spot. Immediately after, the hidden guards broke through the window, and with a single chop of the hand, they knocked him to the ground where he couldn't get up. I patted my hands in disgust, me gaze icy cold, throw this disgusting thing onto the couch in the inner room. Immediately after, the hidden guard once again slipped out through the window like a ghost. Moments later, he returned carrying a woman who had been poking her head around outside, tossing her in like a broken sack. It was none other than Bai Chan Chan. Looking at this pair of scheming bastards on the ground, I couldn't help but show a mocking expression. Since they love using aphrodisiac incense to create scandals so much, I'll grant them their wish. The hidden guard positioned the two of them together. As the hallucinogenic incense in the burner burned stronger and stronger, these two would soon lose their senses and make complete fools of themselves. When Elphayun hurried back with people to find me, I had already calmly climbed out through the window the hidden guard had opened. Taking a deep breath, I smoothed my wrinkle-free dress and returned to the banquet hall with a smile. The banquet continued with its songs and dances. After about 15 minutes, a stewardess rushed through the crowd with a panicked expression and stumbled to her knees before the Princess Royal. Today was the spring feast, personally arranged by the Princess Royal herself. After hearing the stewardess's shocked report whispered in her ear, the Princess Royal's face instantly turned ashen, and she slammed her wine cup heavily on the table. "This is absolutely outrageous. In broad daylight, to dare commit such shameless acts in the imperial villa." The Princess Royal was furious. She rose and swept her sleeves as she left. The madams from various households exchanged glances with each other, then quickly followed along out of curiosity. Before even getting close to that side courtyard, from far away, Ivrione heard an extremely bizarre and unbearable cacophony of wild laughter and quarrelling, accompanied by the loud crashes of things being smashed. The two strictly raised old madams immediately changed their expressions, and those unmarried young ladies were so shocked by the crude and filthy language that they all covered their ears. When they reached outside the side room, the sword-bearing guard beside the Princess Royal kicked the door open with one foot. Inside the room was a complete mess. Under the effect of the hallucinogenic incense, Jiang Yuanshu and Bai Chanchan had long since completely lost their reason, for some unknown reason. The two were actually fighting over a few hundred taels of silver. Jiang Yuanshu, with disheveled hair, pointed at Bai Chanchan and cursed her as a greedy village woman, while Bai Chanchan, with no grace whatsoever, rode on top of Jiang Yuanshu, scratching and clawing, cursing him as a useless good-for-nothing deserter. The two rolled around on the ground, utterly disgraced. Even seeing the doorway packed with the capital's nobility, they remained immersed in hallucinogenic delusions, shamelessly throwing tantrums and rolling around, even starting to expose each other's sordid scandals. The onlooking crowd immediately gasped, and mocking laughter and pointing surged like a tide. Good heavens! Isn't that the Jiang family's second young master who came back from the dead, and his village woman wife? Oh my God, they were actually inhaling that low-life hallucinogenic incense in the eldest princess's elegant garden, and then went crazy fighting each other. What a disgrace to all their ancestors. I heard these two eloped when they got married, completely without propriety. Seeing them today, their behavior is absurdly outrageous. The eldest princess watched this eye-searing scene, trembling with rage. Splash these two reckless fools awake. Throw them out of the villa immediately. The guards brought several large buckets of ice-cold well water and poured them down with a loud splash. Accompanied by two piercing screams, Jiang Yuanshu and Bai Chanqian finally shuddered violently, completely snapping out of their hallucinations. Looking at the contemptuous faces outside the door, and the eldest princess's murderous gaze, the two were scared out of their wits, both collapsing limply in the puddles, trembling uncontrollably. Once this self-directed and self-acted farce spread, the entire capital was relishing the gossip about these two's legendary joke. As he was dragged out like a dead dog by the servants, Jiang Yuanshu desperately searched through the crowd, finally spotting me standing on the high steps, neatly dressed, watching coldly from the sidelines. He looked at me with eyes as if laced with poison, while I disdainfully curled the corner of my mouth. Want to use such despicable means to ruin my reputation. This is what you get for digging your own graves. The Grand Princess, in her fury, reported this matter directly to the Emperor. To quell the imperial family's rage, the old Marquis personally brought out the family law and had Jiang Yuanshu tied up in the ancestral hall, where he was severely lashed 30 times with a thorny whip. He was beaten until his skin split and flesh tore open, and by the time he was carried back to the separate courtyard, he had only half a life left. Even that restless Bai Chanchan was slapped hard across the face by the disciplinary matron sent by her mother-in-law, her face swelling up like a pig's head, and she no longer dared to go out and see people. After all this commotion, my ears finally got some peace and quiet, and I actually had a few comfortable months of good days. But I never forgot that with Jiang Yuanshu's vindictive personality, once he recovered, he would inevitably strike back, like a venomous snake. When the old madam learned that her son had been beaten, although she knew full well he was at fault first, her heart that favoured her own flesh and blood was ultimately twisted, and she actually secretly blamed me for not pleading on Jiang Yuanshu's behalf at the time. After Jiang Hongxi learned of this, his expression darkened like water. I understood that my decisive and swift husband had finally decided to no longer show them any courtesy. Is my husband feeling somewhat disheartened, after pouring your heart and soul into the Marquis manor and giving so much in the end, in the eyes of the two elders? It still can't compare to that good-for-nothing blood relative. I helped him remove his outer garments and asked softly. He gripped my wrist with his other hand, pulled me into his embrace, stroked my hair, his eyes gentle yet firm. I have no regrets. If they hadn't made such an absurd decision back then, you and I wouldn't have formed this wonderful bond. I was only considering the old Marquis's dignity. wanting to leave that deserter an intact corpse and a way out. But I never expected he'd remain incorrigible, daring to use such filthy means to harm you. This time, I will never show mercy again. Hearing his protective words, a warm current flowed through my heart, and I didn't try to dissuade him further. Because Jiang Yuanshu truly should pay the price for the seeds he planted 6 years ago. When news of Jiang Yuanshu's death in battle reached the capital back then, the entire nation believed he was a loyal martyr. To commemorate his heroic death in battle, the court not only provided generous compensation, but the emperor personally bestowed a plaque reading whole family's loyalty and courage to be hung in the main hall of the marquise's mansion. And now, under Zhang Hongqi's thunderous methods, the Ministry of War worked through the night re-examining the case files from that year. The truth quickly surfaced back then. Jiang Yuanshu didn't bravely fight enemies and fall off a cliff, but was cowardly and afraid of death, deserting the battlefield. While fleeing in panic without choosing his path, he accidentally tumbled down a mountain cliff and lost his memory. Once this shocking scandal was exposed, the entire court was in an uproar. I was utterly shocked too. Although I knew his character was despicable, I never expected he would turn out to be such a cowardly and shameless deserter. His Majesty was furious. What a heinous crime of deceiving the emperor and undermining military morale. The emperor immediately issued an edict, stripping Jiang Yuanshu of all his titles and ranks, and sentencing him to 80 strokes of the court rod according to law. Given that he had just received family punishment, the imperial decree specifically ordered that once his injuries healed slightly, he would be taken to prison to receive those 80 strokes. After the beating, he would be completely demoted to commoner status, exiled 3,000 li away, and forever barred from serving as an official. Let me give you guys some historical background setting here. In ancient times, a general deserting in battle was an extremely serious crime, basically equivalent to treason-level offense. It would undermine military morale and cost you your head. Plus, he faked his death to fraudulently obtain court compensation and honor plaques from the government, that is basically roasting his entire family over a fire. The emperor only punishing him with 80 strokes and demotion to commoner status was really already giving face to the old marquise's lifetime of loyalty. What right does this kind of deserter who only cares about saving his own skin, this exquisitely selfish person, have to fantasize about coming back to continue throwing his weight around? Old Marquis spent his whole life in military service with an extremely high reputation. Upon learning that his biological son was actually a cowardly deserter, he was so furious that he spat out a mouthful of old blood. Feeling he had no face to meet the court and his ancestors, he voluntarily submitted his resignation and retired to his hometown. However, the emperor was wise and deeply understood the great contributions Jiang Hongxi had made to the court over the years. Not only did he not revoke the marquis title, but he relied on him even more, thoroughly bestowing this marquis's manor to our branch of the family. With the dust settled, I let out a long breath of relief. All gloom dispersed. Who knew that on the eve of the emperor's court caning, Jiang Yuanshu somehow managed to have people carry him on a door plank, shamelessly knocked on the manor's main gate, and insisted on seeing me one last time. Looking at Jiang Yuanshu on the stretcher, covered in wounds and haggard beyond recognition, I couldn't help but frown and cover my nose, looking down at him condescendingly. Now that you bear the grave crime of deceiving the emperor, you come looking for me, what tricks are you trying to pull now? The moment Jiang Yuanshu saw me, his usual arrogance vanished completely, tears and snot streaming down his face. He pleaded miserably, "Yuan, every mistake is my fault. I shouldn't have been possessed to scheme against you. I beg you, for the sake of our past acquaintance, please show me a way to survive. If those 80 rod strikes come down, this body of mine definitely won't be able to endure it. So it is begging for mercy to save your own skin." A mocking smile curved at the corner of my lips as I decisively shook my head. This matter was personally decreed by His Majesty as an ironclad case. I am just a mere woman powerless to help. Jiang Yuanshu struggled to crawl over and grab the hem of my skirt, but was kicked away by a guard. He lay on the ground crying bitterly. "Help me, get Jiang Hongqi to put in a good word for me before His Majesty." He has the most influence with the emperor as long as he is willing to speak up. His Majesty will surely show leniency. Watching his pathetic groveling in the dust, he rebuked him coldly. His Majesty has already issued an imperial edict announced to the entire realm in black and white to severely punish you, this coward who deserted the battlefield to uphold military discipline. And now you want my husband to plead for you. Are you trying to make him defy the imperial decree for a deserter like you? Or do you want to drag our entire Marquis household down with you? Upon hearing this, Jiang Yuanshu froze, stammering in defense. I never thought of harming him. But after all, he took my place and enjoyed all that wealth and glory for so many years. Shouldn't he be grateful to me and seek a way out for me? Hearing such outrageous words, I finally understood completely that this person was, from beginning to end, thoroughly and utterly, a selfish, unprincipled scoundrel. You've brought today's misfortune entirely upon yourself. Just suffer through it slowly, if you really can't take it. Don't you still have that true love of yours, Bai Chen, who shared your hardships? You two are star-crossed lovers who aren't even afraid of death. Having her take a few dozen beatings for you would be perfect. My deliberately provocative words made Jiang Yuanshu's face turn from green to white in rapid succession. A spectacular sight. At that moment, Fei Yun gleefully twisted the knife. Second young master doesn't know yet, does he? The very day after your imperial decree came down, that Miss Bai, who kept saying she loved you, had already made off with all the valuable items and property deeds from your estate, hiring a carriage in the dead of night and vanishing without a trace. Learning that he'd been stripped of all his titles and become a criminal who could die at any moment, a woman like Bai Chen, who only cared about wealth and status, how could she possibly stay to suffer through exile with him? Naturally, when disaster struck, each flew their separate ways. Upon hearing this, Jiang Yuanshu's entire body convulsed violently. His eyes rolled back, and he fainted dead away on the stretcher from sheer rage. I mercilessly ordered people to throw him out. Under such severe punishment, most of his life was already gone. Apart from Zhang Hongqi, who, in all of the capital, would dare to associate with this deserter who had deceived the emperor, but I couldn't muster even a shred of pity in my heart. This was the evil he had wrought, the consequences he deserved to bear. 6 years ago, everyone in the capital praised the young Marquis of the Yongyang Marquis Manor for being brave in battle and high-spirited. Back then, with a young girl's longing, I too had hidden in the tower to secretly watch him riding his tall horse in a green robe. His upright figure, believing wholeheartedly that I had found a good man and entrusted my whole heart to him. Who knew that on our wedding day he would leave under the pretext of going to war? And a month later, what awaited was the devastating news of his death on the battlefield. At that moment, at 20 years old, I truly felt like the sky had fallen. Outside, rumors and gossip were overwhelming, saying I had a cursed fate that killed my husband. Me Natal family was eager to distance themselves for the sake of reputation. My in-laws were too consumed by grief to care about me. Was I supposed to shave my head, go to a nunnery to keep company with Buddhist lamps and scriptures, and live out the rest of my life like a living corpse? It was Jiang Hongqi who, in that darkest moment when everyone avoided me like a venomous snake, walked through wind and rain to stand before me and told me he had a way to let me live with dignity, not only preserving my reputation but also restoring my honor. He entered the game himself, resolutely becoming the old Marquis's adopted son, shouldering the crumbling Marquis manor, and steadily supporting my crumbling life. Step by step, I established authority in this deep manor, and the current glory of the Marquis manor, prosperous as cooking oil over a roaring fire, was all fought for bit by my husband and me together. Jiang Yuanshu from beginning to end. Jiang Hongqi owes you nothing, and I, Shen Yuan, owe you even less. On the contrary, it is you, this selfish and cowardly wretch, who owes those departed souls who erected monuments and wept for you, who owes the family you nearly dragged down with you. This severe punishment handed down by imperial authority is the debt you must repay for the rest of your life. Jiang Yuanxi was mercilessly thrown onto the street by the servants while unconscious. After that, I never saw him again. I only heard that on the day of the court beating, the old Marquis ultimately couldn't bear to let the family line end and used up the last bit of his dignity and savings to bribe the executioners to show mercy. But even so, with 80 military rods coming down, Jiang Yuanshu, who was already terminally ill, ultimately couldn't withstand such severe punishment. He was dragged back to the dilapidated temple, and within half a month, he breathed his last breath amid regret and pain. Upon learning of his death, the old marquis fell gravely ill and couldn't make it through that bleak winter, passing away 3 months later. The old madam was also bedridden with illness, the blow of losing her beloved son and husband leaving her mentally confused. Zhang Hongqi fulfilled his duty as a son, sending the best imperial physicians to the villa to care for her, but the physicians all secretly shook their heads, saying frankly that her days were numbered. When I heard the news, I merely waved my hand calmly. The vast marquis estate, having weathered the storms, had long since welcomed a new life, this golden age that rightfully belonged to us husband and wife. A year later, the early summer sun shone bright and brilliant. I took El Yun with me in a carriage, heading to the south of the city to inspect the newly opened rouge shop. As the carriage passed by the most luxurious restaurant in the entire capital, a sudden commotion broke out. A woman dressed in tattered hemp clothes, disheveled and filthy, was being dragged out mercilessly by 2 burly waiters from the main entrance and thrown hard onto the street. The restaurant manager stood on the steps, scolding harshly. "Where did this crazy woman come from? How dare you come to our top-tier restaurant to freeload without money to pay the bill, and even dare to order bird's nest and shark fin, pretending to be some rich lady?" That woman's hair was disheveled, and like a common shrew she threw a tantrum, rolling on the ground, screaming loudly, "You blind, dog-eyed slaves! I used to be the young mistress of a prestigious marquis manor. If it were in the past, even if your crappy restaurant begged me with 8 sedan chairs, I'd still look down on your bland dishes with disdain." A crowd of onlookers immediately gathered around, bursting into roaring laughter. "What kind of pipe dream are you having in broad daylight? The current mistress of the Marquis Manor with her breathtaking beauty, is she someone a beggar like you can claim to be and scam people with? I think this crazy woman is just starving mad and wants to dine and dash. Guys, quickly beat her out with sticks, don't let her dirty the restaurant's reputation. Let everyone get a good look at this liar's face. And from now on, no household on this street should let her in." The waiter impatiently stepped forward, disgustedly using a towel to shield his hand as he grabbed her chin and lifted up that filthy face of hers. Just then, a breeze lifted the curtain of my carriage, and I instantly locked eyes with that wretched gaze. I was slightly taken aback, then suddenly realized, wasn't this the arrogant and domineering Bai Chan Chan from back then? Lel Feiyun sneered from the side and reported in a low voice, "Madam, guess what? After this woman ran off with that deserter's money back then, she thought she could live a life of luxury. Who knew she had no idea about keeping wealth hidden? And got targeted by hustlers from the gambling dens in the city. In just a few short months, she was swindled out of all her savings, racked up a pile of debts, and got sold to a low-class brothel. She finally managed to escape, and now she is probably starving, trying to put on airs as some non-existent young mistress to scam food and drink. This woman is truly foolish beyond measure. If she had just stayed properly with the old madam back then, even if that deserter was gone, she could have gotten some pocket money, and it would have been enough to keep her fed and clothed for the rest of her life." I smiled faintly. How could Bai Chan Chan possibly endure loneliness? From the moment she abandoned Jiang Yuanshu and fled for wealth and glory back then, her fate today was already sealed. A person cannot stand without integrity. Those with ill intentions, even if they once held a good hand of cards, will end up playing them terribly. Her current miserable state is entirely of her own making, and she can't blame anyone else in the slightest. I lowered the carriage curtain, no longer sparing even a glance, and instructed the coachman, "Let's go, there is still a pile of account books waiting for me at the shop." The carriage slowly moved forward, leaving that filthy commotion behind. From behind came the faint sound of Bai Chan Chan's desperate and shrill screams. "I am the Marquis's wife. I was supposed to be the Marquis's wife living in luxury. You unruly commoners, give me back my wealth and glory." The voice gradually faded away, dissipating in the wind. I shook my head and completely erased it from my memory. back when news of Zhang Yuanshu's downfall came. He had also sent people to secretly investigate the truth. That peasant girl Bai Chan boasted with absolute certainty at the time, saying he was a husband bestowed upon her by heaven. Since she loved picking up trash that others didn't want so much, I treated it as a good deed and generously gave him to her. Looking at it now, facing reality's harsh beating, she regrets it so much her guts have turned green. But then again, what does that have to do with me? I pulled back the curtain and looked up at the azure sky not far away. The sun was blazing at the horizon, its light spilling onto my exquisite brocade skirt, shimmering brilliantly. My good days, Shen Yuan's good days, have only just begun, and they'll last a long, long time. Phew, finally finished reading. Don't you all feel like that pent-up frustration in your chest has completely cleared out? What an exhilarating cut ties and move on feel-good story. Just think about it, if Shen Yuan had compromised with convention 6 years ago, choosing the rigid rule of staying faithful till the end, spending her days with nothing but oil lamps and Buddha statues, she would have not only lost herself, but when that selfish bastard came back, she'd have been stripped of all dignity, begging for scraps just to survive. But she didn't give in. She bravely chose a partner who truly understood and protected her, and through 6 years of decisive household management and financial planning, she completely turned her fate around and became the powerful female lead in control of everything. This reminds me of the eye-sunk cost trap that we modern women often encounter in life and relationships. Sometimes we get held hostage by old flames and the so-called sense of investment. But Shen Yuan shows us through her actions and wisdom, never let yourself be trapped by people and things from the past. And never try to wake up someone who is pretending to sleep, a selfish jerk. When a relationship becomes poison that drains you, cutting your losses in time and making a gorgeous exit is the highest form of wisdom, no matter how much gossip there is from the outside world, as long as your inner self is strong enough, and you can firmly hold the steering wheel of your life in your own hands. No one can put you down at will, just like what is described at the end of the story. The sun is blazing bright on the horizon, its rays shining brilliantly. My good days are still long ahead. I hope every one of us girls can be like Shen Yuan, becoming the master of our own lives, not clinging to others, not blindly following, not looking back. If you meet the wrong person, just wave goodbye decisively. If you meet a good partner, walk side by side as equals. Because your confidence in facing everything always comes from your own strength and independence. Thanks everyone for listening to this amazing story with me. If you are also facing moments in life where you need to make decisive choices, I hope Shen Yuan's story can give you the courage to break through. Friends who found the story satisfying and thrilling, don't forget to like and subscribe to show your support. See you in the next story. Love you all.